The fluorescent lights hummed in an empty hallway at 3 in the morning. Somewhere in Oklahoma, a young woman sat at her kitchen table staring at documents that would either save lives or destroy her own. The coffee had gone cold hours ago. Her hands trembled as she turned each page, not from fear of what she might find, but from the terrible certainty of what she already knew. In that moment, Karen Silkwood crossed a line that exists in every workplace, every boardroom, every corner of America where power meets conscience. The line between staying safe and staying silent, between keeping your job and keeping your soul. She had no way of knowing that her choice would echo through decades of legal history, or that her name would become both a rallying cry and a cautionary tale. Some decisions reshape not just our own lives, but the very definition of justice itself. This is the story of one woman who chose to speak when the world preferred silence, and how the system she trusted to protect her became the very thing that would bury her truth. The year was 1974, and the nuclear age was still young enough to seem like mankind's greatest achievement. America's power plants hummed with atomic energy, and the Cold War demanded a steady supply of plutonium for the nation's defense. In the small town of Crescent, Oklahoma, the Kerr-McGee Corporation operated one of only 10 plutonium facilities in the United States. This dramatized narrative is inspired by real legal principles and public case records. It is presented for educational and entertainment purposes, with interpretations attributed to their respective sources. The Zamarin fuel fabrication site stood like a monument to progress, where ordinary workers transformed one of the most dangerous substances on Earth into fuel rods for nuclear reactors. For the employees who passed through its gates each morning, it represented good jobs, steady pay, and the pride of serving their country's energy future. Karen Silkwood was 28 years old when she became a laboratory technician at the facility. Born in Texas, she had moved to Oklahoma seeking stability and purpose. The work was technical, precise, and carried the weight of national importance. Every day, she handled plutonium pellets, mixing them with uranium and placing them into stainless steel fuel rods that would power America's atomic ambitions. At first, she was everything Kerr-McGee could want in an employee: dedicated, thorough, and proud of the role she played in America's nuclear program. She believed in the mission, trusted the company's commitment to safety, and saw her work as part of something larger than herself. But the nuclear industry in 1974 was still learning what it meant to harness the atom safely. The first cracks in Karen's faith appeared gradually, like hairline fractures in concrete that spread slowly before the whole structure collapses. Leaking pipes went unrepaired. Defective equipment continued operating. Workers reported contamination only to be told to keep working while repairs waited for more convenient production schedules. The company that had seemed so committed to safety began to reveal a different priority structure: cost efficiency over worker protection, production quotas over proper procedures, corporate image over inconvenient truths. Karen watched as her colleagues suffered repeated plutonium exposures. She saw safety protocols ignored when they conflicted with deadlines. She witnessed what former plant managers would later describe as operations that were dangerously sloppy. and in conflict with Atomic Energy Commission guidelines. The transformation from loyal employee to fierce critic doesn't happen overnight. It begins with small compromises you're asked to make, small truths you're asked to ignore. It builds with each incident that gets explained away, each concern that gets dismissed, each time you're told that what you're seeing isn't really happening. For Karen, the breaking point came when she realized that speaking up wasn't just about her own safety, but about every worker who came through those gates, every family that depended on the plant's safety promises, and every community that trusted the nuclear industry to protect them. She made a choice that would define the rest of her life. She decided to fight back. The union provided Karen with her first platform to voice concerns. She was elected to the bargaining committee, becoming the first woman ever chosen for the union's negotiating team at Kerr-McGee. This position gave her access to safety records, incident reports, and the kind of documentation that could prove her allegations. But it also made her a target. The evidence she began collecting painted a disturbing picture of systematic safety failures. Between 1971 and 1975, contamination reports would later show that at least 76 workers had been exposed to dangerous levels of plutonium. The company's own records documented a pattern of equipment failures, procedural violations, and contamination incidents that should have triggered immediate safety reviews. Karen's investigation revealed something even more alarming than individual safety violations. The entire culture at the Cimarron facility seemed designed to prioritize production over protection, profit over people, and corporate reputation over worker welfare. As you listen, notice how easily this could be anyone's workplace, anyone's choice between security and conscience. In August 1974, Karen took her concerns beyond the union and testified before the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission about the facility's unsafe working conditions. Her testimony was detailed, documented, and damning. She presented evidence of quality control failures, lax safety procedures, and a corporate culture that treated worker contamination as an acceptable cost of doing business. The AEC listened. They investigated. They found merit in her complaints. But Karen's victory came with a price that she was only beginning to understand. Corporate retaliation against whistleblowers in 1974 was both more direct and more subtle than today's legal protections might suggest. There were no federal whistleblower statutes to shield employees who reported safety violations. No legal framework to prevent companies from punishing workers who spoke out against dangerous practices. Karen found herself increasingly isolated at work. Colleagues who had once supported her concerns began keeping their distance. Management scrutinized her every move, documented her every mistake, and created an atmosphere where her continued employment seemed increasingly tenuous. But Karen had crossed the line from employee to activist, from worker to warrior. She couldn't retreat now, even if she wanted to. The plutonium contamination that would consume the final weeks of Karen's life began on November 5th, 1974, under circumstances that have never been fully explained. An alpha detector in her work area registered contamination on her right arm, but testing revealed something far more disturbing. The plutonium had come from inside her protective gloves, not from the pellets she was handling, but from direct contact with her skin. Even more alarmingly, medical tests revealed that Karen had somehow ingested plutonium with dangerous levels detected in her biological samples. For 3 successive days, portions of her skin showed plutonium contamination. Each morning, she would arrive at work apparently clean, only to test positive for contamination by the end of her shift. The pattern defied every safety protocol and suggested something far more sinister than accidental exposure. The contamination extended beyond Karen herself. Testing of her apartment revealed plutonium in her kitchen, her bathroom, and even in food from her refrigerator. The particular type of plutonium found in her home came from a production area where she didn't work, in a vault to which she had no access. Someone had deliberately contaminated Karen Silkwood with plutonium. The Atomic Energy Commission's investigation would later reveal that 4 of Karen's urine samples had been doctored, with plutonium added to them after collection. No explanation was ever provided for who had access to these samples when the contamination was added, or why someone would deliberately falsify evidence of plutonium exposure. The message, however, was clear. Karen had become too dangerous to the company, too persistent in her allegations, too effective in her advocacy. The contamination served as both a warning and a weapon, a way to discredit her testimony while demonstrating the consequences of challenging corporate power. But Karen refused to be silenced. By November 1974, Karen believed she had assembled sufficient documentation to prove her allegations against Kerr-McGee. Company papers, safety reports, contamination records, and evidence of the systematic cover-up that had endangered dozens of workers over several years. She contacted David Burnham, a New York Times journalist who had previously exposed police corruption and was now investigating nuclear industry practices. Karen arranged to meet with Burnham on the evening of November 13th, planning to provide him with a folder full of documents and photographs that would demonstrate the extent of the safety problems at Cimarron. The meeting would expose not just individual safety violations, but a pattern of corporate negligence that could reshape how America viewed the nuclear industry. Karen never made it to that meeting. On the night of November 13, 1974, her car left Highway 74 near Crescent, Oklahoma, and struck a concrete culvert. Karen Silkwood, 28 years old, died instantly. The official investigation concluded that she had fallen asleep at the wheel, a tragic accident that ended a promising young life. But the folder of documents that witnesses had seen her carrying was never found in the wreckage. An independent accident investigation hired by Karen's union reached a very different conclusion. Professional investigator A.O. Pipkin found evidence that Karen's car had been struck from behind by another vehicle, forcing it off the road in what appeared to be deliberate homicide disguised as an accident. The truth of what happened on that dark highway may never be known with certainty, but the pattern of intimidation, contamination, and corporate retaliation that preceded Karen's death painted a clear picture of a company willing to go to extraordinary lengths to protect its secrets. Karen Silkwood's death marked the end of one story and the beginning of another. The woman who had tried to expose corporate negligence was gone, but her family's fight for justice was just beginning. The legal battle that would emerge from her death would challenge fundamental assumptions about corporate liability, worker safety, and the price of speaking truth to power. It would reveal not just what happened to one woman in Oklahoma, but what happens to justice itself when corporate interests collide with human conscience. The courtroom drama that followed would prove that sometimes the most important victories come not from the verdicts we win, but from the truths we refuse to let die. To let die. On March 6, 1979, more than 4 years after Karen Silkwood's death, her family finally entered a federal courtroom in Oklahoma City. The delay itself told a story. 4 years of corporate legal maneuvering, procedural challenges, and attempts to bury the case before it could see daylight. But now, in the longest civil trial in Oklahoma history, the truth would finally have its day in court. The plaintiff's table held Karen's parents, her children, and the weight of unanswered questions. At the defense table sat Kerr-McGee Corporation, represented by a team of attorneys whose combined legal fees could have funded a small city's budget for years. Between them sat 12 jurors who would decide not just the fate of one family's quest for justice, but the broader question of how far corporate power could reach before the law said enough. The man who would carry Karen's story into that courtroom was unlike any attorney the nuclear industry had faced before. Jerry Spence arrived in Oklahoma City wearing his trademark fringed buckskin jacket and cowboy boots, his long hair and unconventional appearance making him seem more like a frontier folk hero than a trial lawyer. Spence had initially been reluctant to take what seemed like a high-risk case with little chance of success. But as he studied the evidence, read the depositions, and understood the scope of corporate negligence that Karen had tried to expose, something shifted in his approach to the case. This wasn't just about one woman's contamination or one family's loss. This was about the fundamental question of whether ordinary people had any protection against corporate power when that power decided they were expendable. Standing before the jury, Spence's voice carried the weight of that understanding. Throughout history, he told them, there have been certain times when ordinary people have been given extraordinary power. This could be one of those times. There may never be another trial like this. The evidence that emerged during 3 months of testimony painted a picture of corporate negligence so systematic that it challenged basic assumptions about how American companies operated in the nuclear age. Former plant managers James Smith and Jerry Cooper testified about safety conditions that defied comprehension. Equipment leaked radioactive materials directly onto workers. Pipes carrying plutonium-contaminated water ran through areas where employees ate lunch. Safety protocols were routinely ignored when they interfered with production schedules. Most damaging was Smith's testimony about the 40 pounds of missing plutonium, enough material to construct several nuclear weapons. The company claimed this material unaccounted for was still somewhere in the plant's pipes and equipment. Smith, who had supervised the facility's operations, dismissed that explanation with devastating simplicity. If there are 40 pounds still at Cimarron, he told the jury, I don't know where they are. The security implications alone should have triggered federal intervention, but more immediate was what the testimony revealed about how Kerr-McGee treated its workers' health and safety. Internal company documents showed that management knew about contamination risks, equipment failures, and safety violations years before Karen began her whistleblowing campaign. The company had conducted its own studies, received its own reports, and made deliberate decisions to continue dangerous practices rather than invest in proper safety measures. As you listen, notice how the arithmetic of human worth gets calculated in corporate boardrooms where safety improvements are measured against quarterly profits. The defense strategy focused on portraying Karen as a disgruntled employee who had contaminated herself to support her allegations against the company. They suggested that she had somehow obtained plutonium from restricted areas and deliberately exposed herself to create evidence for her lawsuit. But this theory collapsed under the weight of the evidence. The plutonium found in Karen's apartment came from production areas where she didn't work. The contamination appeared in her urine samples after they had been collected, suggesting deliberate tampering by someone with access to both the samples and weapons-grade plutonium. More fundamentally, the defense couldn't explain why someone would deliberately poison herself with one of the most dangerous substances known to science. Karen's medical records showed genuine fear about her contamination, repeated requests for better safety equipment, and growing concern about her long-term health prospects. The testimony revealed something darker than individual negligence. It exposed a corporate culture where worker contamination was treated as a cost of doing business, where safety violations were documented but not corrected, and where employees who complained were systematically intimidated and marginalized. Witness after witness described a workplace where plutonium contamination was so routine that workers had developed their own informal protocols for dealing with exposure. They shared contaminated clothing, worked with leaking equipment, and continued handling radioactive materials even when safety alarms indicated dangerous conditions. The company's own safety records, introduced as evidence during the trial, documented hundreds of contamination incidents over a 5-year period. Internal memos showed that management was aware of these problems, but had made calculated decisions to continue operations rather than invest in comprehensive safety upgrades. But perhaps the most revealing testimony came from current and former Kerr-McGee employees who described the atmosphere of fear and intimidation that surrounded any criticism of safety practices. Workers who reported problems found themselves reassigned to less desirable positions. Those who persisted in raising concerns faced disciplinary action and eventual termination. Karen's decision to take her concerns to the Atomic Energy Commission and eventually to the media had marked her as particularly dangerous to corporate interests. The systematic contamination that preceded her death appeared designed to discredit her testimony, while demonstrating the consequences of challenging company policy. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict that sent shockwaves through the nuclear industry. They found Kerr-McGee liable for Karen Silkwood's contamination and awarded her estate $505,000 in compensatory damages. Then came the number that changed everything: $10 million in punitive damages. The gasps in the courtroom were audible. Reporters scrambled to confirm what they had heard. The largest punitive damage award in Oklahoma history had just been handed down against one of the state's most powerful corporations. But the victory was temporary. Corporate legal power has its own momentum, its own gravitational pull that bends the arc of justice in directions ordinary people rarely anticipate. The appeals court overturned the punitive damage award. The case eventually settled out of court for $1.3 million, a fraction of the original jury verdict. The legal system had spoken, then spoken again, then whispered its final word in private negotiations sealed from public view. Karen Silkwood's story became the inspiration for a major Hollywood film starring Meryl Streep. Her name entered the lexicon of American whistleblowing, mentioned alongside other figures who chose conscience over security. Yet the deeper questions her case raised about corporate accountability and worker protection remain as relevant today as they were in 1974. The nuclear industry implemented new safety protocols, but the fundamental tension between profit and protection continues to shape workplace decisions across every sector of the American economy. The missing plutonium was never recovered. The circumstances of Karen's death were never definitively resolved. The documents she was carrying to that final meeting were never found. Sometimes justice leaves more shadows than light, more questions than answers. The truth doesn't always win in the courtroom, but it never stops echoing in the corridors of power where conscience meets convenience, where ordinary people make extraordinary choices, and where the price of speaking truth remains as dangerous as the silence it seeks to break. This was the case they tried to bury before trial. But some truths refuse to stay buried no matter how deep the grave or how powerful the hands that hold the shovel.